All right, thank you very much for an opportunity to talk at such a great conference. I'm going to have to cue a couple of things up just to make sure that I get them out. First, I hope at the end of this you'll be inspired, as many designers are, to make something or to make things, because that's really what this story is about, is making things and getting people in a place where they actually can. And I think that's probably the most important component, and just to make sure that I get it out, because it's not necessarily right in the deck. My name is Mark Hatch. I'm the CEO of TechShop. How many people have heard of us? You know, a small smattering of folks. Therein lies one of my problems. A makerspace is something that we're pioneering along with folks that do hacker spaces and other kinds of things. And so I need to set a stage and kind of explain what a tech shop is or what a makerspace is. And then we'll weave that into a story around the innovation revolution that we're on the cusp of. What a great conference name. I believe that we are truly on the cusp of the largest revolution, most powerful creative and innovation revolution in all of human history. You take Gutenberg, and you take the Reformation, and you take the first two industrial revolutions, you take the information revolution, you take Web 1 and 2.0, compress them together, and then you enable them through giving people access to physical tools, and all kinds of amazing things are going to happen, and we are literally on the cusp of a huge innovation, creation innovation. But first, what is a makerspace? I'm going to burn through these very quickly. I want to do a little audience participation. So here's what I'd like you to do. You see the big words on the left, and they'll be up at the top that says floor plan. When you see it come up, I just want you to say the word. So, 1, 2, 3, floor plan. Great. And that'll help training for a little bit later. 3D studio. CNC vinyl cutter. The hub. Mill machines, metal lathes, TORMACH CNC mill, finishing room, storage, EPILOG laser cutters, metal shop, CNC plasma cutter, hot shop, vehicle bay, wood shop, SHOPBOT, grinding room, plastics, TECHNO CNC mill, textiles, community. There's your floor plan. All right. So that's what a makerspace is. It's 15,000 square feet of every machine tool, woodworking tool, digital prototyping tool, textile machines, plasma cutters, welding machines, literally everything you need to make anything that you want. We've been variously described as the ultimate garage, Gold's Gym for the DIY crowd, an incubator loft, here's one of my favorites, Imagineering and Skunk Works for the rest of us, because I'm not smart enough to be in either of those spaces. The place where dreams are built is how we like to describe ourselves. We're a membership-based, open access, do-it-yourself machine shop and fabrication studio, quote, a makerspace. We charge $100 a month to give people access to the most powerful tools of innovation and creation needed to drive the global economy. Every physical inventor since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution has had access to these tools. Many of the laborers, starting at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, lost access to these tools because they moved into corporations. And what's happened just in the last 15 years is that those tools are now becoming cheap enough that we can reintroduce them to the common man for the cost of about $3 a month. It is truly amazing. So what is the innovation revolution and what's driving it? So here's where I need some help. Variously, I'm going to ask you to say boom for me. I'm a Green Beret. It's the kind of thing we like to do. I'll raise my hand and I'll bring it down and you'll say boom. So let's practice. Boom. All right. So welcome to the innovation revolution. The largest untapped resource on the planet is not natural gas, it is not solar, it is not wind power. Here's your tweetable moment for those of you who tweet. It'll fit, trust me. The largest untapped resource on the planet is the free time, creativity, and disposable income of the creative class. There it is. 40 million people in the United States. You are a representation of who they are. They control $474 billion in disposable income. They're spending on average 20 billion hours a year watching television. We're spending that $474 billion on McMansions, urban assault vehicles, and frappuccinos. Great use of that resource. I beg to differ. What would happen if we could take just a small portion of that intellectual capital and that knowledge and the design capability, and we were able to give them access to the tools that they had lost access to 240 years ago for the cost of that frappuccino addiction? From a macroeconomic perspective, every dollar that we take from Starbucks and that you drink, and we move into a creative endeavor that creates something valuable, is a free incremental growth in the economy. So there's the hypothesis. Let me show you what's actually happening. This is the cool part. So Andy is one of our members. And like me, you know, in 68 or 1970, I was promised a jetpack. Andy's doing something about it. This is not photoshopped. That is a pilot. He's hanging out at about 200 feet above a tarmac somewhere. That baby makes an awful lot of noise, and he broke one leg and two arms, or two ribs, learning how to fly it. A small price to pay, I believe. So Andy's literally working on jetpacks. Ken and his team have designed the world's fastest electric motorcycle. It hit 166 miles an hour on the Bonneville Salt Flats last summer at 70% throttle. There's something going on with the lithium-ion anodes that start to dissolve or something, so they can't go too much faster. The thing is literally a rocket ship. This is, I've got too many favorites, so you know, this is one of my favorites. I've got a lot of favorites. This is a 19-year-old kid, loved robotics, was the head of his first robotics team at Palo Alto. I couldn't afford a Segway, so he did the obvious thing, went on the internet, found a mentor, and built one. Pretty bright kid. More importantly, at least I think, he was dissatisfied with the Segway because the problem with the Segway is you can't sit on it, right? And so, so Danny built the very first two-wheeled electric bar stool. I think that's what the world needs. Yeah, two-wheel bar stool. I mean, talk about pub crawling. What's really cool is this baby will do 18 miles an hour. Yeah, we're talking serious pub crawling. Chris is an artist. I love this one. You know, he won an installation award. He got $5,000 to build this beautiful aortic arc. Costed it all out. It was going to cost him $7,000 to build it. He's an artist. He's going to do it anyway, right? If you don't suffer for your art, clearly you're not an artist. Discovered us, built it for $3,000, and pocketed the $2,000. This is what happens when you have access to tools. Instead of having to outsource it to somebody locally, he was able to do it himself. Karen's one of our success stories. I've got two amazing success stories. So Karen had a dream, and that's one of our, what we like to say is you build your dreams here. Karen's dream was to be able to supervise her retired husband. But she had a day job, and so it was very difficult. To create enough revenue to close the gap, she decided that what the world needed was a green bamboo needle gauge. So if you're into knitting and quilting, by the way, it's a $3 billion industry in the US. But if you're into knitting and you have a bunch of needles, they come in different sizes, and when you buy the needles, evidently you peel the little gauge off, or the numbers off to tell you how big it is. And so you need this gauge to be able to tell how big the needles are. Otherwise, I guess your socks are too loose or something or other. So she had a beautiful, green, biodegradable, beautiful set, except for one thing in her kit, and it was, that polymer plastic or that steel needle gauge, and so she wanted to do them out of bamboo. called EPILOG Laser Company up and said, hey, I'd like to know what that laser would cost because I think the laser is the right way to go. And they said, if you have $25,000, we'll ship it to you tomorrow. She didn't have $25,000. There's the key to the story. She couldn't afford it, so she went back to her job. She didn't quite give up on her dream, called EPILOG back and says, no, really, I want to try this. Even if I lose a little bit of money on the first 100 units, I think there might be a market there for this. And they said, you know what, try this TechShop thing out down in Menlo Park. So she came down, took a 90-minute class, cost her $45. Within about 4 weeks, she had a little Etsy site up and running, sold a few hundred of them. 6 months later, her brother-in-law quit his job. A year later, she bought a $45,000 laser cutter, and she's now doing well into 6 figures and supervising her husband during the day. This is our biggest success story as far as an entrepreneur goes recently. So Patrick Buckley came in, I guess it was about 6 months ago, 2 weeks before the iPad came out, and said, I want to build iPad cases out of bamboo. There's something about the bamboo theme here that I haven't cracked, but it's clearly important. So he comes in and says, I want to do it out of bamboo. What do I need to do? Well, become a member. It's $100. Take the computer numerically controlled intro class for $85, 90 minutes. Take the SHOPBOT class, the CNC controlled woodworking. It's another $85, so he's into it for $280. Leverages our dream coaches to tweak the design, leverages our textile instructors to figure out how to get the fake leather laminate to work with the case. Within a few weeks, he's got a couple hundred of them, ships them out. Within a month, the unofficial guide to Apple picked it up, said it was the coolest of the iPad cases. He got 1,000 orders at $60 a pop the next day. Gawker picked it up. He got 6,000 orders the day after that. Within 4 months, he had sold $1 million worth of iPad cases. We are completely and totally, radically blowing away the barriers to entry. The power of the tools to visualize and produce what you want on a screen and then to translate that into 3 dimensions has never been easier, and it fundamentally changes the arc of required artistry in order to be able to build the case. It changes the economics of being able to get to the place where you're building the case. You can literally launch a company these days for hundreds of dollars rather than hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's what's going to drive this revolution. It's hard to get any work done, frankly. The staff comes and says, Mark, you won't believe this. You say that every day. You got to go meet Mike. So I go outside. Hey, Mike, how you doing? Great. What are you doing? I'm building a desktop diamond manufacturing device. Yeah, of course you are, Mike. Okay. So, well, how does it work? Oh, it's easy. Yeah, right. That's why I've been doing it in my garage. Okay, Mike, I'll bite. How does it work? He says, oh, okay, so you take 95% hydrogen and you stick it in this port. And then you take 5% methane and you put it in that port. And says, well, you know, what is that? He says, oh, it's a vacuum chamber. Now, to me, it looked like a really poorly milled block of aluminum. It was his first attempt, and it looked like it. But he kept going. He says, okay, so you got hydrogen, moderately explosive, methane, moderately explosive. What do you do with it? Oh, you put it under lots of pressure, okay? And then you get a used magnetron from a microwave. Yeah, of course, because you're going to fire that baby up and create a plasma ball in the middle of this pressure chamber. So you're going to save $100 on a magnetron so that you can put all the stuff under pressure? Oh, yeah. And you see this? This is the viewport. So I can watch the plasma ball form under the 9 pressures. He's actually growing diamonds in his garage. They're now about 1/2 pea sized. It turns out he was a diamond tool deposition physicist. And so I asked him, well, hadn't you done it before? And he says, it's simple. To get to this place where you see the little box up there would have cost me $100,000. And I'd had to borrow it from friends and family, and I like going to Thanksgiving. So I didn't do it. But I found you guys, and so I was able to get to my first proof of concept at $2,000. Disposable income enabled him to be able to do something that used to cost $100,000 that he'd been dreaming about for 40 years. But because the tools had been buried in research and development labs in large companies, he was never able to pursue that dream. What's interesting here is that there are some world-changing innovations that are coming just out of Menlo Park. So we have 738 members as of yesterday morning. In Menlo Park, we have 150 members in Raleigh, and of course, our objective is to get maker spaces everywhere. They don't necessarily have to be ours. We just want maker spaces everywhere because designers and makers need access to this stuff. So James McKelvey is the partner with Jack Dorsey, the Twitter guy. And that is a peer-to-peer transaction processing unit that works on your iPhone. So the idea is that you and I can now do transactions using credit cards. Moderately disruptive tool that gives merchant accounts available to anybody who has an iPhone. It's potentially a very big deal. He did a bunch of his 3D prototyping work on site. Nick and his team have come up with a nitrogen fertilizer detection device that you drag behind a tractor that tells you how much fertilizer you have in the ground so that you don't have to put more on and let it run off and create dead zones. Or if you're a commodity farmer, spend 50% of your income just putting fertilizer out. They picked up a $5 million venture capital round. Trevor is helping to solve one of the world's largest problems. Water distribution is, as many folks know, the world's largest problem. He's got this thing in trials in 200 villages in India and 40 villages in China. It's a really simple 55-gallon drum, gravity-fed drip irrigation system that uses the cheapest polymers that they could find. You punch a hole in it using a tool that tells you how much water is going to come out of it. And it turns out it beats having a 12-year-old wander down to the stream and pull up a bucket of water and pour them one at a time on a plant, which is how most of the subsistence farmers in India and China actually do it. Naganan Murthy and his team are solving one of the world health's largest problems. Infant mortality is one of the top 10 problems in the globe. Millions of kids die every year in the first few months. One of the problems with it is if you're a neonate, 2 weeks or earlier too young, you have a hypothalamus problem and you can't control your temperature. The solution is simple. You just have to get to an incubator. They're $20,000. They only reside in city centers, and hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of kids die every year just trying to get from the village to the incubator. So this is a Stanford grad came up with an idea of leveraging a technology he learned about in school. It's a phase-changing polymer that he embeds in the blanket that keeps the child at 98.6 degrees. And you can heat it over a stove, you can heat it over a flame, you can boil water and put heat into it, and it will either cool the child if it's too hot because it phase changes one direction, or it will warm the child if it's the other way because it phase changes in the other direction. They originally designed it simply as a transportation mechanism. They're going to put these in all the little villages and then allow them to transport the child to the incubator. But it's been successful enough that if you're far enough away, it's only 2 weeks, you only need 4 or 5 of these, and you can just keep rotating them. They're going to save 100,000 children's lives in the next 5 years with this particular blanket. Now, why it's important is actually the community, because what happened was, these are 20-some-year-old kids, they just graduated, they come into a community of 700 creatives, sit down and tell this wonderful story about what they're doing. And so the licensed guy who has made millions of dollars selling toys to Hasbro comes over and says, hey, what do you know about design for manufacturing? Not a lot. So he donates design for manufacturing intellectual property to the team. Somebody else comes along and says, what do you know about the current technology about fabrics from all the different global suppliers? Well, not a lot. I just graduated. It's like, well, I work for IDEO, and I happen to have access to the entire set, so I really know what you need to do. So what's happened is the community gathered around them and significantly improved their intellectual property so that they can hit their particular dream, which is to save children's lives. There it is, right? So we are literally on the cusp of the largest innovation and creativity revolution the globe has ever seen. We've got all of history pushing and supporting us in this. We've got Gutenberg. We've got the Reformation. We've got the first two industrial revolutions. We've got the information revolution, which is giving us access to markets in extremely disruptive ways. And most importantly, for the designers that are making physical goods, the tool costs have come down 90% in the last 15 years. A $250,000 machine I can buy for you for $17,000, and now we're renting it out for $100 a month. Thank you very much.